Welcome to a radical discussion of independence, free will, liberty, and the left-hand path. This is Demonosophy with your host, Paul Frederick. Welcome to Saturnian Sessions on Demonosophy, where we delve into the groovy dark vibes that arise for those who dare to stay up too late on a Saturday night. My guest tonight is William Ryan Scroggins, tattoo artist, musician, student of the occult, initiate of the Golden Dawn, Freemason, and general student of the universe, is here to talk with us tonight about his experiences and magic and efforts and the kind of world that he lives in. And Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
You bet, man. So let's start out. Let's do a toast. What are you drinking tonight?
Lafroig.
And that's what is that? Scotch?
Scotch, yeah.
All right, cool. I'm drinking some Tullamore Dew Irish whiskey here. So, cheers.
Salute.
All right. So, for the people that, for those who don't know, I met Ryan. When did I meet you? Was that last year? It was last year during COVID, right?
Was it before or after lockdown?
It was during lockdown. I'm pretty sure it was like during lockdown because I, like probably a lot of people during lockdown, decided, hey, with all this extra time, it's a good time to like go get like some tattoos that I'd been like putting off, like wanting to get for like years and years, and had all this extra time. And in the neighborhood, you know, I live in the Heights, and I was driving by this the Flying Squid Tattoo shop. I'd drive by it like you know, a couple times a week, you know, going to HEB, and I would like start wondering, I wonder maybe I can find a tattoo artist there. And so I went and I looked online, and I found the different artists on Instagram, and I was following like several of the artists out of the Flying Squid, and your work kept coming up in my stream with this like Egyptian stuff and this Aleister Crowley stuff and this occult stuff, and I'm like, this is the guy that I want to work with. So that's how it all happened to me. So I started getting a hold of you then, and then we ended up doing some. I ended up getting some tattoos from you. I got that and Beelzebub up here. So I enjoyed all that very much, and so that's where we like met, and so gosh, I'm just like talking about myself now.
We've gotten a bunch of cool stuff from you, I'll say that.
Yeah, definitely. No, I loved it. I love like the work you do. So so before I just like eat up all of this time just talking about myself, I start every interview asking people how they found their initiatory path. So I'm going to ask you that. How did you find the initiatory spiritual path that you are currently on now?
Well, I'll give you the shortest version I can. I actually grew up in a Baptist school, very religious, well, not very religious, but, you know, Southern Baptist religious family. I went to Baptist school until I was about 13, 14. And then we moved across the state, and I went to public school. So that was kind of like a culture shock for me. And, you know.
And where was this at? Where did you go?
I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay, gotcha.
And then we moved to Texas City specifically. I finished high school. Well, didn't finish high school, but went to high school there, and then ended up in Houston. But when I got into my teens, you know, I was in punk rock bands, and then once I started tattooing when I was 17, so I kind of quit playing music for a little while because I wanted to, you know, get good at my career. And then once I got kind of established, I was like, okay, I have time to play music again. So I didn't want to play punk rock. and I didn't want to sing or play guitar. So I was like, I wanted to do something different. Um, I was like, well, my second favorite music would be like reggae and ska. So I started thinking about it, and I was like, you know, what would I like to do? And I was like, well, my second favorite instrument out of all of that would be the organ. So I started playing organ and getting into reggae a lot more than I had before. And I started realizing, you know, that the Rastas were definitely very spiritual, very Old Testament. So I thought that was kind of cool because it was like bringing me back to my roots in a strange way. Um, and then years and years later, um, I started having anxiety attacks. Um, my psychotherapist actually taught me the fourfold breath, which he didn't call it that, but that's what he taught me at the time. And I didn't even realize it until years later that he was essentially the first getting in a car accident and flying through the air and sliding across the pavement and having my appendix removed a couple days later. So I think that was the final push for me to actually step out and join Western mystery schools, or at least it spurred me into getting serious about researching them.
So I have to stop. So you cut out there for a second, and then all of a sudden there was like a car crash. So you were in a car crash. You were in a wreck yourself. Okay. And that was
Yeah,
kind of a pinnacle. That was kind of a pinnacle moment where you like kind of changed after that, and what say you got more serious about certain things.
yeah, and that's when I started, you know, researching the different Western mystery schools because I had heard, you know, if you live in the West, it's better to go with the Western tradition. If you live in the East, it's better to go with the East. They both work, but I've always heard, you know, if you live in the West, you might want to consider a Western tradition over a Eastern tradition. So I started studying, you know, all of the different Western mystery schools that exist. Uh, you know, I like a lot of people in the U.S. My grandfather, my dad, my great uncle, they were all Masons. So I looked into that for a while, and then I started. But I was like, you know, I want something more ceremonial. And then I found, you know, the Golden Dawn, and then I researched the Golden Dawn, and then I found out there were all these different, uh, not necessarily lineages, but schools of the Golden Dawn, and so I eventually worked my way through all of that and joined a handful of schools, and some of them I'm not active in, some of them I'm not very active in, and some of them I'm very active in still. So, but that's kind of, you know, uh, what led up to all of it, I guess. I think I've always been like this since I was a little kid, but I think different events kind of triggered it further and further. You know what I mean?
So what do you think it was? What was it about the car wreck that kind of changed things? Was it gave you a sense of like, the time is short?
Yeah, I think everybody that's real serious about the occult has had either a personal near-death experience or someone near to them has died, and it, you know, for me, I was like, well, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die right. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Uh, so I think a lot of people that are seriously involved in the occult have had, you know, personal realizations of death. You know, because that's essentially what Western mystery schools teach us to do. They teach us to die properly. You
Mm.
know.
No, that's a great way. That's a great way of looking at it. I mean, they all have like they all deal with that like question in some way or another. And uh, there's this idea. I think it comes from. I think it's Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff said that the highest goal everyone could have um, is to be completely aware of their own death. Like if everyone was just aware of the finality and the absoluteness of their own impending death, then everyone would realize, oh, well, I absolutely must take advantage of this day, this hour right now to try and be a more conscious being, to try and be a more present being, to try and be more real, and to do the things that that I'm not going to have time for. later on.
Yeah, and I think the more you're taught through mystery schools about death, the more comfortable you become with it. You're not afraid of it. I mean, the ancient Egyptians used to celebrate it, um, and you realize that it's not what we're taught to believe that it is. It's just a transformation. It's not an end. It's a beginning.
Yeah, you kind of you tapped into what my next question was going to be, is why is it that the popular schools, or you in your case you mentioned Baptists, Southern Baptists, they talk about death too. Why is that? Why was that not enough? And why did you seek elsewhere?
Well, I stopped going to church um, around the time that we moved. When we went to church when I was younger, it was a family thing, like our relatives and friends, all went to this one church. And when we moved, we kind of lost that family unit aspect to it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
We were going to church, a new church in Texas City for a bit, but it's like we didn't know very many people. It was a different vibe. I got a very bad vibe from the preacher at one point. At one point, one of my friends committed suicide, and we were going to church like a little bit, and I found out that this particular preacher was going to teach at his preach at his funeral. And my mom told me, he's going to come over and talk to you. And this guy comes over and basically says, like, well, I'm going to preach at your friend's, I'm going to give the sermon at your friend's funeral. And I just want you to know that I'm going to try to do a good job, and yada, yada, yada. We end up going to the funeral. And about 5 minutes into the sermon, he starts talking about how you need to tip the offering plate, and
Uh-huh.
I'm like, wow, dude, okay,
Yeah.
so that definitely put a bad taste in my mouth, and we just kind of stopped going at that point. But I've always known since I was a kid, like, you don't need churches inside of you.
Yeah.
One thing I had happen to me that I like to share with a lot of people is when I was in a second grade. Do you remember, like, when we were young and they would have the felt boards where they would stick like characters and figures on them to tell you a story, right, in
Oh yeah.
school?
Yep.
So in Christian school, English and science and math and all that, but you also had Bible class. And in Bible class, they were teaching the story on the felt board, and they were talking about missionaries. And I thought it was really cool because I had a friend who his parents were missionaries to Brazil, and they would go and stay there for a long time, a long part of every year they would be in Brazil. And I was like really into National Geographic when I was a kid, watching National Geographic specials, and I thought it was like really cool that they got to go do that. And so, long story short, the teacher was teaching us about missionaries, and she said at the end of her whole spiel, she was like, and this is why we have missionaries, because people don't learn our God and our religion, that they're going to go to hell. And being a little kid, I was like,
Hmm.
no, they're not. And she was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, hold on, you're trying to tell me that an isolated tribe of people in Africa that have never heard of our specific religion and God is going to go to hell? And she was
Hmm.
like, yes. And I was like, hold on. Monks on a mountain in Tibet are going to go to hell because they don't practice our form of religion. And she was like, yes. And I was like, you're wrong, you know? And she immediately sent me to the principal's office. Um, my parents were called. They put me in another room. To this day, I have no idea what was said, but I went home that day and no one ever said anything to me about it again. And it freaked me out as a small kid because I was like, okay, these adults that are supposed to be teaching me have absolutely no idea what they're talking about.
Hmm.
And as a little kid, that was a little freaky because I was like, wow, do I know more than some of these adults? And I realized, like, yeah, I do.
Yep.
you know uh, but I'm thankful for that moment because I think it taught me a lot, and I think that that's one of those spurring points of my spiritual awakening or what have you, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And even being that young, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, 100%. So, when you tell that story, I think of like my experience was when so my father was he was kind of an existentialist and an intellectual and a philosopher and stuff like that. But his family that he came from, it's all in Missouri, the hills in Missouri, you know, Ozark Mountain Country. We're pretty Baptist, and so he died when I was young. I was like 9 years old when he died, and the funeral was at this little old church out in the sticks, you know, out in the country in Missouri, so around near Dunaweg, Missouri, and the preacher, like, who was like, you know, officiating over it, he said it's too late for Bill McAtee, but for the rest of you it's not too late. Come on up to the altar and be saved, because that form of like religion is, no, you got to come up to the altar, you got to come up there and you got to shake and roll and stuff like that to like prove yourself. And it's like he used my, then I was like young enough to know. See, he's first of all, he's saying my dad's in hell, right? And he's using that to scare other people. He's using it as an opportunity to scare other people into you know, flock. They're all already flock members anyhow, right? They're all like people from like the area, you know, and so they're all like, he's using it as this opportunity to reinforce his like his fear dogma. And you know, like you, and there's a couple of other experiences, you know, when I was young and I asked like a preacher, you know, I asked a priest, you know, what he really thought about, you know, the afterlife and stuff. And I realized they don't really know. They don't really know what's going on. And they're just like, because if you ask too many questions, then they get mad at you and start punishing you for asking questions. Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess like you, I look back to that. That's the earliest experiment or experience that set me on this path towards finding another way, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I have no problem with Christianity, but then again, I understand its origins and its true purposes. And it, you know, it's been corrupted like everything else. And there's good people in certain organizations and there's bad people in certain organizations, but you can't, you know, you can't lump them all up into one box.
Right.
Uh, and I think that's the issue these days is people are doing that with all types of things. And it's like, you can't do that, you know?
Yeah, it's part of the human problem. It's
Yeah.
like Christianity, it's not because of like, you know, how I feel about Christianity and everything that I just described. It's not because of like what Jesus said necessarily.
Yeah,
It's because of
yeah.
like what people have done with it, right? You know? It's
Well, and
because
there's, you know, people definitely like power positions, you know.
right.
It's like that not just in the church, but in the, you know how it is. It's like that in the occult, you know. It's like
Yeah.
that in the workplace. It's like that, you know. Like you say, it's part of the human problem.
Right. It's like they try to turn it into they try and turn it into an organization, you know. And it's like, you know, it was like it when I read the Gospels, everything that I'm taking out of it is that this guy was really against organizations, and he
Yeah.
thought that the state. I mean, if there's anything you can take out of like the Gospels, it is that the state crushes the soul of man. Like
Oh yeah.
even though they don't want to. Like Pontius Pilate is like, well, I see no problem with this man. He doesn't even want to like fuck with this guy, but he has to because that's what the system does. That's what the state does. No choice. Sorry, guy. We're gonna have to nail you to a cross like everyone else up there. You know.
Well, it's like I was saying earlier, church is inside of you. It says it right there. The kingdom of heaven is within you, you
Yeah.
know.
No, he says it over and over again. Like how, I don't know, it's like, you know, 30 times throughout the Gospels, he says like the kingdom of heaven is within you. And it's like that's the clearest message if you just read it, right? If
Yeah.
you just read the source itself, that's clearly the main message, right?
Yep.
But then that's not what you experience out in the outside world. You experience people like, coming up, you need to feel really bad because Jesus died for your sins, and you need to like feel bad about that and do something
And
about
then
it.
you've got the Joel Osteens of the world out there too,
Yeah. Right. No, he's just trying to turn it into, and we have to say we're both like Houston residents here, so we live in the city that has the largest televangelist ministry on earth. Um, it used to be a great concert hall and a sporting events arena, but now it's like a huge televangelist like ministry, and he's like basically like just transforming Christianity into I don't know, what would you call it? It's like kind of a self-help like 12-step
it's like
kind of
a
thing.
I don't even know. Yeah, it's wild, that's for sure. I like meeting people that go to that church, and I'm like, oh yeah, I saw Depeche Mode play in your church.
I saw Don Henley. I saw Don Henley like play in that church. I saw him
Trying to
do
think,
Hotel
out of there,
California.
I don't remember. I think I saw Nirvana and Depeche Mode are the only two bands I can think of off the top of my head that I saw there. But yeah, it was. I think it's crazy that that place is a church now.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
It's massive, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like he's turned it into like a reality game show almost. It's wild.
Yeah. So I got to ask you now about tattooing. Let's drill down on the tattooing. How did you actually start? How did you start tattooing? How did you get to the point where you like took one of those guns and you're like, I'm gonna put this permanent mark on someone else's skin?
I got lucky. High school, I had a friend. I'll give him a shout out. His name was Bobby Alexander, and he was one of those guys, that bought a tattoo machine, like a tattoo kit, and was tattooing people out of his bedroom in high school. He was a couple years older than me, and we'd go over to his house and drink and smoke and watch each other get tattooed. Luckily, I never got anything out of the bedroom back in those days. I'm kind of thankful for that. Uh, but long story short, he ended up getting a job in Galveston. He got an apprenticeship at a shop in Galveston, and this was around the time me and a few of my other friends had dropped out of school, so we would go just hang out at the shop. And I got to know everybody at the shop, and he ended up quitting and moving to a shop in Clear Lake. He actually called me and he was like, "Hey man, you're a better artist than me. You should take some of your art high school over there and show the lady that runs the shop. Her name is Susie McCamey. The name of the shop was Body Language Tattoos, and it's still there to this day in Galveston. It's changed locations a few times since I was there, but it's there. And Susie is the lady who ended up teaching me how to tattoo. She's still alive, and she's runs. But yeah, so I took it over there and showed her my stuff, and she ended up giving me an apprenticeship. I was only 17 years old at the time, so I got like super lucky. I got in at an early age, and I worked there for about a year and a half, and then I only apprenticed for about 9 months, and I worked there including my apprenticeship and everything. I worked there for about a year and a half. Then I ended up moving to Houston because that's where all my friends were, and I knew I was going to move up there anyway. Worked at a shop called Lucky Star for a little while. I ended up at a shop called Hot Stuff Deluxe with Carson Vester and Eric Doyle. They were both running it at the same time. Carson's a pretty big name in tattooing. That's another guy that I'll give credit to. He definitely taught me more than probably anybody else has taught me about the industry after I had initially been taught. Um,
And where were those shops at in Houston? Is that like
Lucky
down in
Star,
the
Lucky Star was in Montrose.
okay.
Hot Stuff Deluxe. I worked there longer than any other shop. I worked there for 11 years. It was on the southwest side, and I probably would still be working there if the like originating team hadn't kind of went off and gone and done different things. And then I moved to a shop.
You remind me of when I like first moved to Houston was 1998. And I remember like going up and down the Montrose, like all the tattoo places that were going on. I mean, tattooing was such a big thing then. And I'd gotten all my tattoos up to that point. I got all my tattoos like in the early 90s and stuff in Lincoln, Nebraska, where I had lived before. And tattooing was so big in Houston. It was such a thing. And I was like, I gotta get I gotta get me some new tattoos, but I just, you know, 20 years went by. 20 years went by, and when I like got a hold of you is like the time I came to do it. But I like how you're mentioning like all those time that time period of the 90s. I think that was like a real special time in Houston that's like not around anymore that I miss, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame because I know when I was still with my original teacher, she introduced me to all like the big wigs across Texas. You know, she was like, if you're gonna go to Houston, Richard Stell is the man. He's the king. If you're gonna go to Austin, Chris Trevino is the king of Austin. If you're gonna go to San Antonio, it's Weldon Lewis and Sean Dagon. And she took me and introduced me to a lot of these people. And then when I started working with Carson and Eric, it's like they were connected to Chris and Sean. Uh, and it's like and even Richard, and it's like, and that doesn't, everybody knew everybody back then, and now it's not like that at all. There is no really strong community in Texas, in my opinion, and it's very much like you know uh, I hate to keep using the word, but like, rat race.
Uh-huh.
The younger people that have come in have no desire to reach out and make a relationship with the older guys, which is what we made it a point to do because we wanted to learn from them. But now it's like everybody thinks, oh, I can just Google it or YouTube it and not have to make a personal relationship. And I think that's
Right,
the big thing that's changed. And through that changing, it's kind of changed the community. But, it's like that with all of the arts. It's like
right.
that with music. It's like that with the occult.
Yeah.
Uh, and, there are a few younger people here and there that make it a point to do that, but I think it's that they're definitely a minority.
No, I agree with that. So I'm just thinking in terms of music, you know, I tried to do a touring band thing in the 90s with my band Morphine Angel, and I remember that like everything that I learned about how to do music like at that level, like how to book shows, how to like put out an album, you know, how to record an album, you know, all of that stuff I learned by going and meeting people, right?
Hmm.
And it's like there was like a culture of mentorship for our generation, you know. Yeah, I read some books. I checked out some books and I read some books about, you know, how to, you know, do these things or and you read magazines and stuff, but it's really when you meet other people and connect with them that you have that knowledge exchange. And I
Well, and
feel that
back then booking a tour, you had to call people
yeah,
and you had to make relationships with those booking agents and people that worked in actual clubs that you were going to go visit. It's not like that now.
right. No, you had to cold call people and you knew that that person you're calling, they're maybe only by that phone like 2 hours a day. They're
Yep.
not going to return calls and they don't give a fuck about you and your band
Yeah.
that they've never heard of
Yeah.
before. And
Until you
so
make
that's
a
what you're up
relationship.
against, you know?
Yeah, until you make a relationship with them, and that's what I always thought was important.
Yeah.
Like when my band, I'm sure we'll end up talking about this later, but so my band formed from an old band that broke up, and the reason that we kept my band was supposed to just be a studio project, but the reason that my band became an actual thing was because we had a West Coast tour booked with the previous band that I was in, and our singer at the time broke the band up, and I was like, well, we're not going to cancel this tour. I've been calling these people on the phone. I'm
Uh-huh.
not going to destroy all these relationships that I've created all the way across the West Coast and back to Texas just because this guy wants to break the band up. Like, we're going to take my band, you know
Yeah.
what I mean, and fulfill those dates and obligations with my band. And
Yeah.
that's what we ended up doing. And it was good because my band ended up being a thing after that. But that wasn't the plan. The only reason we did that was simply to fulfill those obligations so we did not destroy those relationships that we had created over
Right.
the years. It takes years to do that. Well, it took years. And nowadays it's just, it's all on the internet.
Yeah.
very impersonal.
Yeah, no, it is. It's like I mean, I'm kind of beyond that stage in my life where I'm like trying to book a tour anymore. It was
Yeah.
somewhere in the early like you know the 2000s. You know, I was doing Asmodeus X and we went and did like some show like mini tours, right? We went out to the West Coast and stuff like that and did some shows, but we never did like I did back in the 90s where you try and book and stay on the road. Let's try and stay on the road for like a month, you know, and just do as much as we can. And when you book a show, that's it. That's your honor and your reputation is all on that. And the show must go on. You have to show up and you have to do the show. And it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. It's like in someone's backyard or someone's basement or it's some bullshit or they're not going to pay you. No, that doesn't matter that you're not going to get paid for it. We went out and like did it to like say, hey, no, we're going to do this, right? We're establishing, we're stating our existence of like we're going to do this even though, you know, the music industry, no one like gives a fuck. We're going to like fucking do this, you know? And so you carry through with it. So, yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of how we ended up too. It's like once time went by, we realized we just couldn't keep doing it the way that we were trying to do it. We got to the point, now I don't even have a band. Now I just play solo. But towards the end of my band, we got to the point to where we realized our best points in the U.S. were the tri-state area up in the East Coast and then Southern California. So we got to the point to where we had good relationships with local bands from both of those areas. We would just fly into those areas and backline equipment with friends bands and tour around for a week or
Yeah.
two just in those specific areas because it's like when we were touring we would do great when we got to those areas, but getting to those areas, all the shows in between, it
Hmm.
just became too rough to where we couldn't even get gas money to go to the next town. So
Yeah.
it became better to fly to those areas and concentrate in those areas. And you can do it in like the tri-state area. You can play in New York for a couple days, New Jersey for a couple days, Philadelphia. Same thing with Southern California. You can play Southern California for a straight 10 days, and every show will potentially be good. If you spread the word properly. And that's how we did it. Nowadays, it's like I just play if my friends are touring from out of town and they want me to play some gigs in Texas with them when they roll through, just for fun.
Yeah. No, that's I totally relate to that. That's where I'm at. And with I mean, look, everything that happened in the last year like has like fucked all of that. I feel like we're talking about what we used to do before COVID came in and fucked everything. It's like I don't know what people do now, you know. During the COVID, I did well, actually, we ended up as Modius X ended up doing more gigs during COVID than we had in the previous like 5 6 years because of like online opportunities opened up for it, right? So you're doing like we did an online gig, and then we did one that was a streaming thing, but someone had a stage set up like out in the country and they streamed it. But I don't know what people would do going forward to like make it. I don't know what the kids are doing nowadays, you
I think
know.
it just depends on where you're at, like
Mhm.
what part of the United States you're actually in. And then even then it varies greatly. Like in Houston, you can go to a show, there's no restrictions, no masks, no vax passports, no positive COVID, negative COVID tests, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
There's none of that. No mask, But you drive down 2.5 hours to Austin, it's a complete different story. You drive 5 hours into New Orleans, and it's a very different story. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's just like, and that's what I mean. It's not those places aren't that far apart from each other. So it's really weird. And I know my friends up in the extreme northwest and the extreme northeast. It's a very different story in those places as well right now. So I don't know. You know.
Yeah. No, it's just bizarre. No one can say anything about what's going on, like geographically. I mean, that used to be the thing though, like in the 90s and stuff, like touring and doing music and in the 2000s, it's like no, it was all about you roll into town, you meet the people, you establish connections, and then you're connected with people in this town, right?
Yeah.
And that's like something that like goes on. And if the connections are good, then maybe you'll come back. I mean, that's part of the reason I'm even in Texas right now, is because in the 90s, my goth band, well, we had lots of like good response in Texas. We had lots of like good contacts in Texas, you know. So the Tone Zone, Bozo Porno Circus,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
all,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, all those guys. I mean, they and Dana Dark, those were all the people that we met like coming through Texas, and everyone was just like, so cool and very like hooking you up and stuff like that. And so when we decided, we wanted to like move down south because we'd been living in Kenosha, Wisconsin, of all places, which is now everyone knows about it. I used to tell this whole story about, yeah, well, we were in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and no one gave a fuck. What is that? Kenosha, Wisconsin, never heard of it. That's Nowheresville. Oh, now
Everybody
suddenly it's
knows
like a
now.
big deal.
Yeah. That's the thing with Texas, man, that I'm proud of is a lot of my musician friends from out of state that I've made relationships with and I still talk to this day. They are always very much willing to profess the fact that everyone they've met in Texas is very hospitable, more so than anywhere else that they've been.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
when bands would come here, we were all about like calling them up and being like, "Hey, come straight to the house. We're gonna barbecue. We got a bunch of beer for everybody. You can crash at our house."
yeah,
Every time anybody from our genre, especially that was playing with us, it's like you're getting hooked up. You're having a straight up. We're gonna have a straight up party. You know what I mean? And I think people appreciate that years down the road. But it's just, that's not why we were doing it. It's just that's just how we roll down here in Texas.
yeah. No, it is. It 100% is, man. And it's like it was so easy for me. Like, we started out this conversation. I was talking about like, I grew up in Missouri when I was like a child, right? So I kind of had like a southern like beginnings, like right there. But then I'd gone and lived in Nebraska and Wisconsin and stuff, Midwest and in the North. And it's like the more when I started touring with a band, I started reconnecting with like other people like in different parts of the country. And everything just the South and specifically Texas was always drawing me closer and closer like back in that direction. That's where the people were nicest,
Yeah,
That's where the people were coolest. That's where the best opportunities were. That's where the weather was better, that's where the economy was better. That's the other thing too, is the economy was like better in Texas than it was in Wisconsin in the 90s, so it's like really easy to make the case, oh yeah, you should just like move down here. Okay, no problem. Let's like do it. It's definitely the place to be. And it breaks my heart when I hear people like from the coasts and from the bourgeoisie, um, you know, talking smack about like Texas, right? It's like you do not know what it's like in Texas. You have
yeah,
no idea. You're like have a false image presented to you of like other people, but it's like it's probably like the best place. It's the most open. People are open and understanding and non-judgmental and like like you said, man. They're like, "No, we're gonna have a barbecue. Come on out."
yeah,
It's that
yeah,
simple.
yeah. Um, I got to plug my band before so that people know.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
so
Let's talk about the band.
my band is Ryan Scroggins and the Trenchtown Texans. Uh, we have 3 full-length albums out on all streaming platforms, and I released 2 solo albums this year. Uh, so check them out. They're on all streaming platforms: Spotify, iTunes, even YouTube. Um, and then the Latin ska band that I was talking about earlier, I was in is pretty big Texas band called Los Carnales, and I played organ for those guys for about 5 or 6 years, and that was a great experience. I got to tour Mexico several times, and those were my first Mexico experiences, going straight into Mexico City and Monterrey, so that was great. Um, but yeah, that's where all my touring days started. Were in Scarnales. We toured Mexico several times, both coasts several times, through the connections, like we were saying, that I made from booking shows in Scarnales. I carried it into Trenchtown Texans. Uh,
Okay.
toured both coasts in Trenchtown, Texans for several years. We never got to tour Mexico. I got an invitation to go back to Monterey right before COVID, and it didn't happen. But
Yeah.
I'd like to get back down to Mexico and play some shows out there. I think people would dig what I'm doing right now. So who knows? Maybe one day. I'm
No,
just
you
not
need
as
to.
active with music as I used to be. So much
Yeah.
more. You know how it is. So many more other things to do.
No, there is, man, but like music's always there. So I always think of when I think of your music, I think of people keep watching that old devil box.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That one's funny to me because that song I wrote about the swine flu.
Okay.
Uh, but now when you go back and listen to it, it's like so relevant for all of this COVID shit.
Yeah.
It's about, for those people out there that haven't heard it, it's just about propaganda on the media and the TV, the devil box, the
Yeah.
TV. Uh, and it's funny if you listen to it now because it's totally relatable to COVID and all of that stuff. I've even made a modified version for when I play now, and I changed some of the words up to fit the times.
Sweet. No, so I love that because I think about that like when I'm sitting around watching TV and we're watching information. Oh, they're giving us new information about COVID. I think of that song, that song of yours, "Old Devil Box," that comes up, and I remember, oh man, it's all like fucking nonsense. It's
Yeah,
all just lies anyhow. There's nothing on here that could possibly even be true, you know?
yeah, yeah. Well, didn't they release those? What was it? CIA documents? I don't know. This year, last year. I'm horrible with time, but I mean, they were straight up admitting like when the TV was invented, that was their plan. Like we can
Yeah,
manipulate everybody with this thing. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like,
yeah. Well, in 1984. Like George Orwell talks about like the big technological innovation, most recent technological innovation that affected culture was the two-way television, which is like the television. And he said that so you realize, oh, it's this thing that's in your house, right? And it's telling you stuff, but it's two ways. It's like it's giving you information, and at the same time, it's gathering information about you. It's seeing into your room,
oh,
basically,
like the cell
you know?
phone.
Right. Well, yeah, or like Google, Siri or whatever those things that people have that just this box that sits and listens all
Oh
the
yeah.
time, and you talk to it and it wakes up. But I mean, it's like listening to everything that's going on and
You see
following
the
all
new
of your
one they made that
data.
flies around your house?
What is this?
So they made a new one. I don't know if it got released or not. I think that it got pushed back, but they made a new like Siri thing, and it looks like a little square kind of box thing.
Uh-huh.
And when you talk to it, it's like white and has a black ring on the top, and the black ring is actually like a drone propeller, and it
Okay.
lifts up out of the box, and there's like a little TV remote looking thing hanging from this like propeller, and it flies around your house and shit,
Oh
and
my
it's Siri.
God.
Yeah, and I'm like, "Yeah, are you out of your mind? Like now the thing has legs essentially and can just walk, or like that thing's flying around your house when you're not there, like checking stuff
Yeah.
out. Like
Yeah.
that's crazy. Anybody who wants one of those things, in my opinion, is nuts.
Yeah. No, that is like fucked up. Now I remember see, I can't even remember the name of it now. The Xbox. There was like Xbox, like this is about 3, 4 years ago. Xbox. There's this thing that you set up and it like films you or it's like videoing you.
Yeah,
It
the
cre- it, it
I
creates
can't
like
remember
a
what it's called. I know
right,
what
and
you're
they
talking
came out for Christmas, and it's like everyone's doing the dance revolution thing, so it's like videoing you, and it's like everyone got that. I got that, right? We got that. We set it up. We played Dance Revolution for like 3 days after Christmas or whatever, and then like fucking forgot about it like everyone else, right? But that device is still sitting there videoing, like, videoing everything that's going on in our living room. And I like eventually I just like took the thing and I took it off because it's like we're not even using it for games anymore. And it's like
That
no one
thing
even worries about it, but they keep trying to come up with new things like this to
that
push
thing
into your
actually had
home.
facial recognition.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That was one of the first things I ever saw that had straight up facial recognition.
Yeah. Yep. They say that like I because I travel a lot for work, so I go to airports a lot. And you know, I hadn't when we were getting tattoos, I hadn't traveled in a while, but I started traveling again in the last in August. And the last time I was in, you know, at the TSA when you're checking in, it's like they scan your ID, you have your phone, blip, you know, with your you know, ticket airline ticket on it, and then you pull down your mask so they can see your face. And this guy told me, it was like just last week, he said, "Hey, soon we're not gonna have to do it. You're not even gonna need an ID anymore." And I said, "Really? That's amazing. I don't know how they're gonna do that. Haha." And then I walked on, and I realized, oh no, that's how they're gonna do that is facial recognition. They're gonna have facial recognition. They're just gonna like, you know, you're just gonna have your phone, bloop, and it's gonna be like your airline ticket, and then it's gonna facially recognize you and connect that with the ticket, and that's it. And this is like all over, and this is already everywhere in China, right? Like China is like social networking and surveillance stuff. They have facial recognition like everywhere in public. Everyone's face is getting recognized like constantly and coordinated with like other things that are going on. So that's the next thing that's like happening in America, I think, through the TSA. That's how they roll out this shit in America. It's through like how we're gonna control how you travel, right? And you notice our whole conversation about the old days is like, oh, we used to be able to just travel, get in the van, go play shows, right? And we can't do that anymore. You can't just get in a van and go play shows, you know, book a bunch of shows. You know, it's
You
like
know,
because everywhere is different.
I don't want to get too political, but I do want to say this because of what you just said is that I was telling somebody the other day. So I had a great opportunity maybe 8 years ago to go to Cambodia. We went to Cambodia, Laos, and Korea on a trip because some friends of mine that I was working with at the zoo were getting married. And
Mhm.
in this trip, we hired a guy to drive us from Siem Reap, Cambodia, which is the city where Angkor Wat is. They actually got married by monks in Angkor Wat. It was a beautiful experience. But we hired this guy to drive us to Laos. Now, we got to the Lao border, and and speaking of border walls, there's a huge 25-foot chain link fence with razor wire all over it, all the way across the
Mhm.
Laotian border there.
Mhm.
And then there's like this little checkpoint that you walk through, and you show them your passport, you pay money to cross the borderline, and I look back and our guy is like leaving, like he's driving off, and I'm like, where's our guy going? We still have a 3-hour drive across Laos to get to where we're going, right?
Right.
And they're like, oh man, he can't cross the border. And I was like, what do you mean? And my friends had been there twice before, and they were like, nah, man, he can't come across. We're gonna have to hire some Laotians to take us to where we're going.
Okay.
And I was like, what are you talking about? And they were like, look, dude. And I just was ignorant of the fact. I didn't know this. And they were like, look, man, unless you're rich or you work for the government or you have some kind of special permission and you're Cambodian or Laotian, you're not going to leave the country. You're not crossing those borders, man. You're
Oh.
stuck in this country forever. And that kind of blew my mind.
Mhm.
And this is like 8 years ago. So this is way pre-COVID and all this stuff. But it
Yeah.
blew my mind because I was like, several things happened on that trip to the point where, and I was a young punk rocker, like fuck the government, fuck the United States when I was young, but it made, traveling a lot like that made me come home and be like, you know what? We do live in a great place. Like
Yeah.
we do have freedom here like no other place. You know what I mean? And I think that's one thing that a lot of Americans need to keep an open mind about. It's like, I think a lot of Americans live in a bubble and it's not their fault. We're conditioned to be comfortable here, but I think when you start traveling outside of your box and traveling to real kind of third world countries, you'll come home with a different appreciation of the United States. Because we do have that freedom right now, and like you say, it's like how much longer will that last? Because it is getting to the point right now to where they are definitely pushing things like crossing state lines is bad, and you know,
Yeah.
COVID pass or vaccine passports and all of this stuff. And
Yeah.
it's like, they are, in my opinion, trying to tighten travel up for some reason. Why that is, I don't know. But
Yeah.
uh, you know, I do think that a lot of Americans need to step outside of their box and realize what we have here is a good thing. You know,
Yeah. No,
we're
I agree
we're not as
100%.
bad as we're told we should think we are. You know.
Right. No, I agree 100%. I agree 100%. It's like the fucking free market, like principles of America are so incredible. People don't understand that that's radical. That is fucking radical. The founding of America was just incredibly radical. These guys are like, no, we're gonna found a country based on like the freedom of the individual, and we're gonna
Yep.
make rules about it in this Constitution. So radical, so reaching back to like the deepest principles from like the Greek and Roman philosophy, that we'd like read before about the principles of this. And it's just an incredible thing. And it's like now it's like they're trying to say all the people that came up with these ideas are bad, right? Let's like destroy all of them. Once they destroy all of them, they're going to be able to say, oh well, the Constitution was just written by a bunch of like racists, and they'll just like throw that out. And it's like you don't understand what you have here is like once we get rid of that, then well, it's just like everywhere else. It's like Laos and everything that you're like talking about. People don't understand that in so much of like Southeast Asia, right?
Yeah.
It's it
Well,
it
when you brought up China, I don't
yeah.
want to talk about China because I don't want to get your channel banned. But my stepmother is Chinese.
Uh-huh.
She's not a full citizen. She's only lived in this country for maybe 4 years. And I'll tell you, man, that was another thing that really opened my eyes is when I met her. My dad went to go live in China for a year when they met. Uh,
Uh-huh.
they actually have a place there, and now they're residing in the U.S. and because of the political atmosphere of the world, unfortunately, I don't think they're going to go back anytime soon. But she still has a condo there. Her daughter still lives there. Her family's still there. Uh, but that was another thing that kind of opened my eyes is when my dad moved to China. He would call me, weekly while he was living there for about a year and just tell me about everyday life over there. And it's not what we Americans think. It was kind of just mind blowing to hear of just the everyday occurrences that go on there. And I'm not saying the Chinese people are bad at all. That's not what I'm
Oh
saying.
no, yeah.
What I'm saying is that the government there has done a very fine job of brainwashing the hell out of the public,
Yeah.
and it's shocking once you realize what's really going on there. And
Yeah.
now I have family there, so it's like it's crazy,
Yeah.
and that's another thing that Americans just don't pay attention to,
Right.
which is fine. You can't expect everybody to be involved in everything all the time, but I think now that we have the internet, we are all globally connected, so we should make it a point to try to, study each other a little more.
Yeah. No, we have the opportunity. It's like the thing is like through the internet you can connect with people. But I mean everything you said about China, no, it's like that. It's like I have like Chinese family also. And everything I'm hearing is that like no shit's like changing majorly over there just within the last few years. We're now starting to hear about it in the media, is starting to say, oh, it's changing over there. But no, it's been going on. They started these changes a while back. It's like the previous administration in China was, you know, we need to make the CCP look a little bit more like European social democracy. So we're going to allow people to own their own homes and stuff like that. And so there's this great expansion, but that's all over now. The current administration said, no, we're done with all of that. And they're like going back, they're going back the other direction. It's like
Oh yeah,
1980, 1984 times
yeah,
times
yeah.
times 10.
Well, that's the
And
crazy thing too that I've noticed in the last handful of years is that if you talk to any American immigrants, especially Asians, they know what's up.
yeah,
Like they know what's up. They're
yeah,
not they've been through it. They've lived through it. My acupuncture doctor's 80 years old and he's a Chinese refugee. You know, he ran in
yeah,
the 60s to Taiwan. Then he ended up in California and now he's here. And it's funny because like I've been going to this guy for about a decade and they don't necessarily talk politics with me, but I never knew what their political leanings were until recently, and they don't preach about it or anything, but just through our small conversations, I've realized like, okay, you guys know what's up. You've seen it
yeah.
firsthand. You've seen the persecution. The persecution. You're refugees. You know what I mean? Like, uh, and I think that's very interesting to your average American when they start talking to people like that, because a lot of the times they'll be shocked on their views, but it's like, well, they think this because of what they've come from, what they've experienced. You know what I mean?
Right,
They know what they have here,
right,
whereas born and bred American has no idea what they're
yeah,
gifted with here.
yeah.
You know?
Well, so look, they're coming from a system where if you say the wrong thing, you might disappear in the night,
Yeah, forever.
and your family might disappear in the night because of what you said.
Yeah,
So you have to be careful what you say to people, right?
yeah.
We don't understand that in the West. We have this tradition of, oh, just say whatever you want, you know? I mean, come on, like just our conversation on this interview, which is going to be on the internet and everything. We like talk so much shit about the government already, right? About the society that we came from because we had the freedom to do that, right? That's part of the founding of. That's why
You would be in jail in
Americanism
China.
is so radical, right? The founding of Americanism is like you should be able to say whatever you fucking want,
Yeah,
right? At any time.
we
And
would
and
already be locked up in China.
yeah. Yeah. And so if you come from a system like that where you can get locked up for just because of what you said, or your friends go get locked up, your family get locked up because of what you said, then you learn to like, just like toe the party line all the time, You have to, you know? So so it's I don't even know what to say about it because things are changing right now. Things are like changing right now, but I just want to say this. I love what we've had in America, right? And in my heart, I will hang on to it to the very end. Like all of my interests in spirituality and like what was Jesus really saying in the Gospels and Egyptology and Set and a Pep and all this stuff. It's like I love all that stuff and I love the freedom of being able to like just talk about all of it, and I'll probably do that to the very end. I'll do that to the very end. And that's where I'm at, and it's like that's where I'll be to the very end. So I guess that's it.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's talk about your style of tattooing. What is your style?
I pretty much do American traditional tattooing. A lot of people say it doesn't necessarily look like that, but I basically taught myself how to draw by looking at Sailor Jerry, draw tattoos by looking at Sailor Jerry designs, and then kind of just based everything off of that. So I think it's because uh, I take what's the word subject matter that wouldn't be considered a traditional tattoo and turn it into a traditional tattoo. So I think when your average Joe sees it, they're like, that's not a traditional tattoo because it's not an eagle and an anchor or a pirate
Right.
ship or you know what I mean. Um, and you know I put a lot of Egyptian stuff and but I like it when people bring me something that's like totally not even really like a tattoo. I say tattoo, but when I say tattoo, I mean traditional tattoo. And then I turn it into that, like I tell people, I'm like, man, I'll tattoo a washing machine on you and make it look like a traditional tattoo. Like I'll do anything, I actually like the challenge of stuff like that. Is like
Yeah.
when people bring me something that's like not like, I've done trying to think of the most recent thing I've turned into a traditional tattoo that's not really a tattoo. Maybe like a Vespa or something like that, but totally turned it into like old sailor looking tattoo. It's like I like doing stuff like that. I like the challenge. Uh and I like to do, I think that's the thing too in art right now is art and music is like I had a coworker of mine tell me like, "Man, you need to stop getting frustrated." He was like, "Look, your issue is that you're original." And he was like, "And nowadays because of the internet, like, he was like, look at Instagram, for example." He's like, "If you type in traditional tattoo on Instagram, they all look the same. Everybody's copying each other." And
Yeah.
actually, that's like what's popular. So if you're copying
Yeah.
somebody and you're good at copying somebody, you're instantly famous. You know what I mean? And he's
Yeah.
like, you're not like that. You're original. And he was like, it almost like fucks people up when they see it because they don't know what to think about it because it doesn't look like everything else.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing with music too. It's like if you're innovative nowadays, it almost like short circuits people's brains because they're like, well, I'm not used to hearing this or
Right.
seeing this. So
Like,
is it
why
good?
would you do that? Why
Yeah.
would someone do that? Why would you be original? I don't understand.
Yeah, yeah. And I've always thought that that was just a travesty because I'm like, well, isn't that the point of being an artist is to create original content, But I don't know. You know how it is. We live in weird times.
Yeah.
Um, but I'll never stop doing what I do. To me, that's the point. Through your magical studies, it's like that's the point. We are creators.
Yeah.
So
No, 100%, man. And I love like the shit that you do. Like I mean, you're like, that traditional style. So traditional style of tattooing is like, the anchor. We said Sailor Jerry, and it's like, thick lines. It's like easily like identifiable from a distance, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
one of the things with it. And I've noticed that like more and more. It's like I understood that about you. I mean, when I was like scoping your style and stuff, it was like the content is the thing that like that drew me into your style first, right? Like seeing your stuff, right? That it was like there was like Egyptian stuff, and you had some Aleister Crowley, and there was like there was a there was like an Aztec one. There's like an Aztec one you did. It's all like these thick black lines and stuff like that. And it's like I like that, and it's like the content like started to draw me into it, but your style is like badass because it is like, like traditional, but you're bringing in like new content into it, so you're making something. I mean, you have like made something completely original. I mean, your whole like tattooing style and everything you do at the squid, it's like you've like created this like, this like niche for yourself, and it's like everything you do is like just, I really like all the stuff you do. So,
thank
I
you.
think you're doing something original.
Thank you. That's what I try to do with my music too, like people always ask me like what is your music? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, they say we play ska and reggae, but when you listen to it, it doesn't sound like that. There's folk
Yeah.
aspects, there's country aspects, there's blues and soul and things like that, singer-songwriter aspects. A lot of people
Yeah.
have told me like jokingly like you invented country reggae.
Yeah.
But it's like I don't think I invented it, but I definitely it's the same thing. It's like, I've taken my influences and made it into one thing. And it's not copying. It's like you can see where my influences come from, but I still am conscious of the fact that it needs to be an original thing, you know.
Yeah.
That's what I tell young tattooers and musicians nowadays. I'm like, look, it's great to be able to show or let people know your influences through your work. Just don't copy it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Like showing it is like a tip of the hat, but copying it's like spitting in somebody's face, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like you
Right.
don't directly copy something. you can let them know that they've influenced you by flavoring it with that, but it's like
Right.
don't straight up copy it, you know.
Yeah, I know. I could tell like when we started like talking when I came in, it's like you don't like just doing like oh, I just want that tattoo off of the wall, you know. It's like you're not excited about that. You want something original. You want like a challenge, or something
Yeah.
original and new to do, you
I don't
know?
mind doing that stuff. I mean, but you know, I've been tattooing for 25, 26 years now, and I've been custom only for shit, maybe 15 years now. I don't know. Uh, so yeah, once I became custom only, it got to the point to where I was like, you know, uh, especially after doing it for so many years, like I still have people come in that'll ask me for something, and I'll kind of be shocked, and I'll be like, "Did you look at my work?" You know, I had a guy come in recently, and he got a fairly realistic tree from me, and when he was asking me for it, I was like, "Man, sounds to me like you want something, you know, fairly realistic, and that's not my kind of territory. I work with some guys that do hyper realistic work, and I could recommend you to him." And he was like, "No, man, I read your bio, and to me, this is a spiritual thing, so I want you to do it." And I was like, "Okay, well, if you want me to do it, and you've explained to me that this is a spiritual thing for you, I'm going to do my best to do it." And it was funny because I did it, and it was fun. Like I went outside of my box, and it looked cool, but to me, it was just so kind of foreign, and I felt like it looked completely different than anything I've ever done before. And I showed the guys I work with, and they were like, "Cool, that totally looks like you did it." And I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah, I mean, it's different, but it still looks
Yeah.
like you did it, you know?"
Yeah. So you don't see so you're saying you don't see your style.
I mean, I know what it is, but I don't like. I have no ego about it. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Like I'm not like that's my shit. You know, you know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Although I did invent one thing that I am like that's my shit. I do this color dot thing, and I know there's other tattooers out there that do this color dot thing, but the way that I use it, I have no qualms about saying this. I straight up invented it. I did it before anybody else, but it's the particular way that I do it. And then once I started doing it, sure enough, like it starts happening all over the place. And my buddy I was working with at the time was like, "Man, everybody's gonna rip you off, and you're never gonna get credit for doing this." But I use it as like a background effect, kind of like the old comic books where you would see old comic books where the background was like a color, but when you really looked at it, it was just a bunch of blue dots making it
Yeah.
look like it was blue. Uh, and so that's the way that I use it. I know people use color dots all the time now, but the way that I use it in particular is what I invented. Uh,
Okay.
and no one people do it in different ways, but no one's really started like directly ripping me off in the same way. But that is one thing that I'm proud to say that I straight up started doing. Uh,
Color
and
dots.
and like I say, I'm not denying the fact that other people use these color dots, but they use them in a different way. And I never saw any of that before I started doing it. That's
Wow.
one thing I got to state because people are like, "Well, you could have seen that," and it's like, no, I never saw any of that. I've been doing that for like at least 10 years now, at
Okay.
least.
Okay.
Uh, so yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's one thing that I will always back myself up about.
No, that's good, man. No, that's good. I just, now I need to go back and look at like other of your work, You haven't done any dots on me, but it's like, yeah, that's like, I know you do dots a lot. That's a part of your thing. I'm trying to like cycle back through like what I've seen of your stuff. And it's like, I'm gonna go back and look at that with this new information,
Yeah, if
you
you look on
know?
my Instagram, you'll see it immediately once you start seeing stuff that has background to it. It's always in the
Yeah.
background of things, the way I use it, but you'll see it.
So this is what I want to ask you is when you're doing a tattoo on someone, you're giving a tattoo to someone, it's an initiatory experience for them, probably. maybe.
Yeah, I think
You know?
so. I definitely think that there's a magical aspect to tattooing. It's like a talisman, um, especially to people that have never gotten one before. A lot of people that have never gotten a tattoo before will come in and they'll have an intent. They'll have a specific design. They have
Yeah.
a reason why they're getting it, like whether it's a family story or something like that, but there's an intention there.
Yeah.
And to me, that's very talismanic. And I don't really advertise it, but it's a word of mouth thing, and I have no problem talking about it here. Is I even do what I call talismanic tattoos, to where I offer a service to where someone can come in. I do a full-on Golden Dawn style invocation. Uh, what we do before, I have them fill out like a lot of paperwork to do this. Uh, and the paperwork is kind of extreme, but I figure out what their intent is. I figure out what force should be invoked, whether it's elemental, planetary, zodiacal, sephirotic. We figure out which one of those specifically it should be. Then I show them the actual hierarchy in Hebrew and the sigil corresponding to that name. I read the names to them, and whatever name they vibe with the most, I will show them the Hebrew spelling of it or the sigil of it.
Uh-huh.
And then that ends up being their tattoo. But what we do is we go into the room and I set it up in kind of a temple formation, do a whole entire legitimate Golden Dawn style invocation. And then in the middle of the invocation where the intention is spoken, I actually tattoo either that Hebrew name or that sigil on them.
Whoa.
And then I stop, and then we close the whole ceremony down.
Wow.
So it's an actual tattoo talisman within a ceremony,
Wow.
a legit invocation.
Wow.
And I treat it like a talisman. And I've only done it for a handful of people because usually it's like I want to know the person before I just do it, or at
Yeah.
least sit down and interview them for a while before I do it because it's a very serious thing.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, that's one thing I like to do too, and that's definitely where it really becomes a talisman. But yeah, I think a lot of tattoos really are talismans, whether the people know it or not, because like I say, there's an intention, and then it's created.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that from tattooing for so long, I definitely think that there's energy transference happening between client and tattooer all the
Oh
time.
yeah, 100%. Absolutely. I mean, for me, like when I started talking to you, it's like I've been to tattoo artists before. I've been to a couple of different tattoo artists like back in the day, and it's like I understand. No, I have to have a connection, right? So that's like part of the whole scope for me is a part of the whole scoping it out. It's like, do we have like a connection? I feel comfortable with it. I have to feel comfortable with about someone coming in. Oh, I gotta put this like thing on you. That's like forever. It's like you have to have like a rapport.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah, I work with this one guy that well, I always tell people it's like don't get tattooed by an asshole.
yeah,
Get to know your tattooer first, because if you get tattooed from someone you don't like, you're just going to end up looking at this tattoo for the rest of your life
yeah.
and
Like
really,
I didn't like him.
yeah, and it's like, why would you want to do that? And I work with several people that have tattoos like that, and they're like, yeah, the tattoo's okay, but man, that guy was a dick, and it's like, and every time I look at it, that's what I think of.
Yeah,
So yeah, I definitely recommend people make a relationship with their tattooer. I mean, fortunately, now that I'm appointment only, I try to do that with all my clients. It's like you come in, we're gonna hang out for like a solid hour before I tattoo you. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
And I like to do that.
yeah,
I tell a lot of people, it's like I don't think I'm a bad tattooer, but I think the reason a lot of people come back to me isn't really because of my talent. It's because I make my clients my friends.
yeah,
They like hanging out with me, and I like it like that.
yeah,
They get a good tattoo, but it's like it's like a weird type of therapy.
yeah. No, 100%.
Hey, do you
So
mind if I smoke my tobacco pipe on your show. I swear to God, it's just tobacco.
I would be like honored if you smoked your tobacco pipe here. I wish that I could smoke a tobacco pipe. Oh, look at him. Look at him, ladies and gentlemen. He's enjoying that tobacco so much. Oh my God, look at that. Oh. Yeah, I don't miss it at all. I don't care. Oh, yeah.
I'm an Aries, and I had to quit smoking cigarettes and everything else.
Yeah.
The pipe tobacco has definitely uh, helped me with all that.
Good. I'm glad. No, I like pipe tobacco. I plan on going back to pipe tobacco around the same time that like um sometime in my 60s. Sometime in my 60s, I think. I'm 53 right now, so I got like seven years or so before I'm
And
just
you're
gonna start
53.
smoking again. Yep.
You don't look it, man. I had no idea.
Oh, thank you. How old are you?
43.
43. You're a young man. You got your whole life ahead of you. So tell me about like so you mentioned like Los Carnales. Was that like that's like the early band that you started working with?
So I started playing. Well, I was in, like I was saying earlier, I played punk rock. We had this punk rock band for a while with my good friend Chris LaForge. God bless his soul. He's passed away now, but he was one of the members of my punk rock band. This band was called The Diseased, and we did some stuff here around Texas and Louisiana for a while, and it was fun. Um, but then when I like I was saying earlier, I stopped playing punk rock and went to ska and reggae. The first band I was in was called Secret Agent 8, and you can find that stuff on Spotify and iTunes and all of that as well. And then I went to Los Carnales. Unfortunately, the Los Carnales album I'm on is not available digitally right now. It needs to be re-released. That's all because of label politics.
Yeah.
Um, the CD is still out there. You can still get that. But I think that they are going to re-release it digitally soon because the label contract has actually run up this year. But yeah, that was fun. They're a huge Texas ska, reggae, Latin rock band, kind of a fusion band.
That's
Uh,
why I asked about it. I mean, they were like huge. It's so like
yeah, playing those shows in Mexico with them was nuts, man. I mean, it was like not to sound fucked up, but it was like playing with the Mexican Beatles at a few of those shows. It was like crazy in Mexico, like,
uh-huh.
and I definitely cherish those experiences. I'm still in touch with a lot of those guys. Really, the only original member right now is Felipe, the singer. Uh, he's kind of reformed the band several times. It was a completely different thing when we were in it. When I was in it, it was a vocalist, stand-up bass player, a guitar player, a drummer. I played organ, and we had an accordion player. Now it's a pretty huge band. They have no accordion, but they have a full horn section. They have a keyboard player, a couple guitar players, bass player, electric bass now, not stand-up. So it was a different vibe when we were in the band. It's kind of a different incarnation now. Still a great band though. Felipe is one of the best frontmen I've ever played with. He is just you wind that dude up and he just doesn't stop. And he's still like that to this day. So yeah, if you're ever in Texas, check those guys out for sure. Because they still to this day, like I say, it's a different style, but they still put on a great show.
I remember the time that I went and saw Los Carnales, and it had to be like 2005 or 6 or 7 or something like that. And it was when Vasquez, Chris Vasquez was in the studio, uh Artisan Studios where we were at. Asmodeus X was like jamming, a couple other bands were there. Chris Vasquez's band was there, and I can't remember. So Vasquez wasn't playing with them, but LaForge was. LaForge was like playing with them. And LaForge used to come down to that studio all the time. And this is in, for people that don't know, this is on Richmond, like 3 blocks west of Montrose.
That's
Rich,
actually where Bunny recorded our second and third record
yeah,
for
yeah, no,
Flying
Bunny,
Squid
yeah, Bunny, yeah,
Trenchtown Texans.
yeah. Bunny was coming down there too, man. And so there was like some point where like LaForge was coming down there all the time, man. And we used to like hang, we used to hang tough, you know. LaForge, right? He
Yeah.
hung, he hung tough, man.
Yeah, he was in Scarnalis with us for a little while too. He was in my punk rock band, and then he was in Scarnalis with us for at least, shit, I want to say at least 3 years of that time that I was in it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and he's a wild man.
Yeah. No, he was great. He was
Yeah.
great. He's like one of those people like when he left, right? When he like, passed on to the other side, it's like, it didn't make any sense. That hurt, a lot of people like had their hearts hurt, but it also did make sense, right? Like he was ready to go, man. I mean, he was like hardcore. He wasn't afraid, he wasn't afraid of anything, you know. And
Still,
also, I
I'm
have to
still shocked.
say, what's that?
I'm still shocked that he's passed away.
Yeah. He was like just like ridiculously talented. I mean, he could just play anything. He would like
Yeah,
come
he's a good
down.
guitar player.
He'd come down to the studio and he'd like, Vasquez would like be playing and he'd like be standing there like, oh no, do this, and he'd pick up the guitar, start like doing this, and they just like fucking go back and forth. And I mean, he was just so incredibly talented. He could just do anything, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
he's a great guitar player.
yeah,
I definitely had some good times with him. We took a we One of the best times I have with Chris is so his favorite band was this old punk rock band called the Toy Dolls, and their guitar player, I think, was in the Guinness Book of World Records several times for like fastest guitar player in the world. Uh, they were playing a show in LA. They hardly came to the States, and when they did, it was like New York or LA. So they were playing a show in LA, and Chris was like, "Hey," and dude, I think at the time I think I was 20 years old. I don't think I was 21 yet. I'm almost positive I wasn't 21 yet because I seem to remember I couldn't go to bars when we went to California. But we took my Honda CRX, a little two-seater CRX, three
yeah,
of us. One of us rode like laying in the trunk hatchback thing. Me, Chris, and my buddy Cassidy took the CRX straight to Hollywood. We stayed with this girl named Becca that Chris had met through touring with 30 Foot Fall. And she was actually on that old Social Distortion, Youth Brigade, Minor Threat movie, Another State
yeah,
of Mind. She was one.
yes,
She was one of the punks from California that they interviewed, and she was old Southern California punk rock girl. We stayed at her house the first night, and it was awesome because she had like photo album after photo album after photo album of just flyers from like the early 80s all the way through
yeah.
to I guess it was the mid 90s at the time of all of these Southern California punk rock bands. And then the next day we went and saw the Toy Dolls play. And I had done a big Toy Dolls tattoo on Chris's leg, and he was like, "Man, we got to get backstage." Their guitar player and singer, his name is Olga, and Chris was like, "We got to meet Olga. We got to meet Olga. I got to show him this tattoo, right?" So we get backstage, and we're all standing there, and we meet Olga, and Chris shows him his tattoo, and he looks right at Chris, and he goes, "Y'all gonna regret that." And I just thought it was hilarious. He ended up signing Chris's leg, and I was gonna tattoo his autograph on Chris's leg, but by the time we got back home, we were all dirty and sweaty, and ended up wiping off. That was some good times right there. We went to a cool record store there in LA, and this is I'm showing my age here by saying this, but man, I wish I could remember the name of this record store. I want to say it was Stupid Records, but that might be wrong.
Toxic? Was it Toxic Records?
It was a tiny little record store, and we walked from. I believe the Toy Dolls played at the Palladium or the Palace, one of the two, and we walked from that club to this record store. And I'll never forget this, man. We walked in there and they had this punk rock band. I was looking for this record from this punk rock band back in the day called the Defects, and you couldn't find it anywhere. You know, this is pre-internet, and they had the album there on vinyl, but it was $50. And I was like, man, if I buy this, I'm gonna end up ruining it, like in the car on the car ride home. Like, I don't want to do that. And the guy that was running the record store at the time, or working the record store at the time, was like, hey, what are you looking at? And I was like, man, I've been looking for this forever, but I'm afraid I'm gonna ruin it. And he was like, look, dude, how much time do you have? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, look, if you give me $8, I'll record this on a cassette tape for you right now. And I thought that was like the coolest fucking thing ever. So I gave him $8, and we had to sit there and wait for the record to finish playing because we were supposed to be at the club, but I was like, I don't care if we're late, I'm gonna get a copy of this record. So I thought that was really cool. I think it was Stupid Records. It's not there anymore. But that was actually the first time I ever went to Hollywood too. So that had to have been like, let's see, maybe 97.
Yeah. No, that sounds good. Yeah, no, Hollywood. Yeah, Hollywood's like a special fucking place, man. First time I went there was like in the 90s, and then there was like this club on Cherokee, what the fuck is the name of it? Off of like Hollywood Boulevard, and then there's Cherokee, and then there was like a big goth club there. Can't remember the name of it right now, but that's where like Asmodeus X is like we went back there like several times to play there. And then I was like playing with Red Flag. We like did a show there too. But it's like, I mean, fucking Hollywood. When you're playing like this, like punk and goth rock and roll shit, like in Hollywood, you realize that like no one gives a fuck about you. It's so like fucking like off the beaten path. It's like all these other people in Hollywood are trying to make it, and they're trying to make it in Hollywood,
Yeah.
right? They want to be in like feature films, right? Everyone there is trying to do it. Every single person, like you go eat at a restaurant or whatever, every person here is like working in this restaurant. They're trying to make it in Hollywood. Because
Yeah.
why the fuck else would they be working here? They'd be working out in some suburb or something, where they could live. It's like everyone around there is like trying to make it there, you
Yeah.
know? And so when you're like just playing in some dumb band, it's like that's just like, the after hours thing. But even as a band, you're playing there because maybe some producer from some film or whatever is going to come in and like, they're going to be bar hopping and they're going to be in your club. They're, oh, this band is cool. Yeah, this is the band I need. Like, for like the shit, for like the next film that I'm doing.
Hey, I'm going to ask you this. Speaking of Hollywood, so have you ever heard of the band Radio Werewolf?
Yes, I have. That would be the band that was like done by Nicholas Schreck and Zena Schreck, Zena LeVay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're one of the few people I know that would actually know that. So
Oh yeah.
weird coincidence. Uh, I guess it's been about 2 months. 2 months ago, me and a friend of mine that's in my order with me went to this event out by Austin, in Austin, essentially outside of Austin. Gnosticon 4.
Okay.
It was the fourth Gnostic gathering in the United States. Long story short, we met a guy there who was the drummer from Radio Werewolf.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, and he's very involved in the Gnostic tradition. He's a Mason. He's in some exclusive invite-only Masonic groups. Super cool dude. I don't know if I should. Well, I've already named him
You've
for people that
exposed
know.
him.
But yeah, super cool dude. Fellow pipe smoker. I had a great time hanging out. It was a great event. That was a really cool event out there. They did. It's run by this guy Peter Reardon, who does the Gnostic Church out there in Austin. He was ordained by Bishop Stefan Heller, who essentially brought the Gnostic tradition to the United States. Basically, anybody who is ordained in any succession in the United States, it all comes through Stefan Heller. So it was really cool to see him there. He was very personable, but it was cool. They did mass every morning. They had lectures every day. They had bands play at night. It was a really, really inviting and very open thing, like no judgment. Everybody was really cool. We definitely met people that we'll probably keep in touch with for the rest of our lives there. It was very, very nice event. I
That's
highly
awesome.
recommend if anybody's ever traveling through Austin and they're interested in any form of Gnosticism to go check out the Gnostic Church there. It's very cool scene. Loaded with all kinds of people. All the people that go there are in many different orders, and a lot of OTO people there, a lot of Golden Dawn people there, a lot of SRC, all over the board. A lot of Wiccans, like
Uh-huh.
very cross tradition. Very cool.
Wow. No, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, very good community they have going on out there.
That's interesting. He was the drummer. He played drums with Radio Werewolf like back in the like 80s, like in like Los Angeles when they were like doing all that. I
Yeah,
think.
straight up. It was funny because we were talking to him and we met him because me and my buddy were standing outside smoking our tobacco pipes, and he was like, "Man, is that a Peterson pipe?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Man, I smoked pipe too, and I left my pipe at home." And that's how we met.
Mm,
And we started talking throughout the day, and he was like, "Are you guys musicians?" And we were like, "Yeah." My buddy Scott that I was there with is a musician too, and we were like, "Yeah, but we don't play so much anymore." And he's like, "Yeah, me too. I don't play so much anymore either." And
yeah.
as the days passed, finally we were like, what did you do? What bands were you in? And he was like, "Well, I was a studio drummer for like 20 years, but I was also in this pretty controversial band that I don't like to bring up in mixed company because, depending on who's around, some people get kind of pissed." And
Uh-huh.
my buddy Scott guessed it. He was like, "Controversial bands. You're from LA. Have you ever heard of this band called Radio?" And he was like, "Radio Werewolf. Yeah, that's
That's
my
it.
band." And we were like,
Super
"Holy shit."
funny.
So yeah, that
That's
was
super
that was
funny.
cool. Definitely cool.
So,
Definitely.
so Nicholas, I used to know him, right? Like I knew him and I knew Xena, like, back in the day,
So,
like late
so the
night.
guy that we met is Evil Wilhelm. That was his band
Oh,
name.
Evil Wilhelm.
Yeah,
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 no, Evil Wilhelm. No, he was like a major person in Radio Werewolf.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
That's
he was like
that's
in the
that's
interviews and stuff. Yeah.
super fucking awesome, dude.
So you met Evil Wilhelm.
Yeah, yeah. We
Wow.
met him as William, but yeah,
Yeah.
after we met him, he's like, "Yeah, I'm Evil Wilhelm," and I was
When
like,
you
"What?"
when you started saying the story, I thought in my head, is it Evil Wilhelm?
Yeah,
Because that's like the only other person that I knew whose name is from it, other than Nicholas and Xena.
yeah.
Um, so Nicholas and Xena like broke up like recently, and so like Nicholas is doing more. He's like, go figure. He's like becoming more active and he's like promoting more Radio Werewolf like stuff and the stuff he did in the old days, which is like great, I think. I mean, because he was like always, I mean, when I met him, it's like we connected on this like, oh no, we're musicians, right? When you connect with someone on a musician level, that takes it to this level of reality that is
It's a
beyond
whole
just
other
like
thing.
just average occultists who are like, oh no, I like, Magic and Theory and Practice is a good book, and blah blah blah. No, it's different when you connect with someone on like doing music and it's like, no, it's a band that played and released albums. You just immediately go to this level of reality and visceralness. Like, no, you just know, like, you did shit, right? You went
It's
out
a
and
whole other
fought
thing.
battles and stuff,
That's what was so cool about being at Gnosticon is we met William that way, and then we met a guy named John and his wife Susan. They were very, very cool. They were from the East Coast. John was also a Gnostic priest, and we met them the same way. Like we started talking about music, and John and his wife were like blue. Well, John was a blues musician. He went on tour with Clarence Gatemouth Brown for like years. They did a year-long tour with Eric Clapton, so we connected in that way. And
Wow.
even Peter, the guy, so the Gnostic Church out there is run by Peter Reardon, and Peter is the same way. Like, so Peter You would never guess this by looking at the guy, but he straight up produced the Ghetto Boys record that went like triple platinum or
Oh
whatever.
yeah. Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
he invented I think it's a compressor, uh, and he kind of like that spurred a whole nother thing to where people wanted to start buying this. Like I guess producers were visiting the studio, they saw it. I don't know if I'm telling this story completely right, but his invention became in high demand, and he created his own business out of it. It's called Shadow Hill Sounds or Shadow Hill Music, I believe. Um, and that's who William works for now. William
Wow.
is the manager of Shadow Hill now.
Oh
So
wow.
it's crazy. It's like a small little family thing that kind of all comes back together. But yeah, you're right. It's all through music, you know.
Yeah.
And I think you're totally right. When you meet people, if you're an occultist and you're a musician and you meet people that are both, you automatically have a greater connection. It's pretty crazy like that.
Now, you know,
Like both of
especially if
us.
you're the same age group, right? If you're Gen X, right? Especially if you're Gen X. I mean, you don't really know about these kids today, you know. But yeah, it's like no, you tried to like fucking accomplish things in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s that we all, you know, I know what that was like. It was hard, you
Yeah.
know, and you had
Yeah.
to actually go meet people and do things and, you know, bump up against reality.
hmm hmm
I
For
mean,
sure.
nowadays everyone just does everything like online, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like I will always like think, you know, it's like the internet connects people. That's great, but people who just like always do things just completely online, it's like you're living in a fantasy world, you know, and
Yeah.
so that's always the thing. And it's like if someone's just lived in a fantasy world their life, then you will know that when you speak with them, you will know that, you know.
Well, it's not the same thing. It's like you can make friends online, but that friend that you have online is not going to be the same type of friend that you have in physical reality.
Yeah.
The bond is not there, you know.
Yeah.
And I've met people online that I would consider friends of mine, but I've eventually met them in person. And when I meet them in person, it becomes a different thing. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
becomes a much greater thing.
Yeah. Well, we've had an incredible like exchange here, and I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to do this. Do you have any final words for all the people out there?
Uh, I don't know. Stay true to yourself. Never stop looking for, evolution and spiritual growth. Uh, that's the best advice I could give, really, you know?
No, that's great advice. So I'm going to tell everyone right now, go online, go to Spotify and iTunes and search for Ryan Scroggins and the Trenchtown Texans. Buy that music, listen to that music. It's fucking awesome. And if you're so lucky that you live in Houston, Texas, and you can get to the Flying Squid Tattoo Parlor in the Heights of Houston, that's where you need to go to get your next tattoo. I swear to God, that's where you need to go.
Thanks so much, Paul.
Thank you, Ryan. Take care, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Good hanging.
All right.